In the Chamber this week, we're kicking off Season 2 with the discussion of ancient heists. We discuss the history of RPG video games and how they developed. We explore a different kind of RPG that puts emphasis on storytelling. And we swing into one of the best superhero films of 2018. 2019 is here, and with it comes all the same podcast fun you've come to expect. Our resolution? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. All that and more on Fandom Roulette. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
Hey Cody, welcome to 2019.
Yeah, welcome. It's a strange new place. Did you see the flying cars over the space highway?
No, but I did see all of the weird like black leather that we have to wear because of Blade Runner.
Right, right, of course. Yeah. And I definitely love the idea of wearing like space swimming suits, which are just like fucking buckles all over your body and then like something to cover your junk.
Zardoz.
Yes. I saw that and I'm ready. I'm ready for the future. Future is now.
It's crazy to me that it's like, you got to imagine like in the 70s when they were making those movies, they're like, what feels like a crazy number? It was like 2019. I was like, yeah, we're not going to be here by 2019. I was like, whoops, we made it.
I'm just looking forward to when,
to my friend.
Nerdy stuff. Well, I had a D&D session over this week. I'm
very nice.
I can't reveal all of the specifics, but it's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
And we had been on a pretty long holiday vacation, if you will, from it. So,
yeah. December, man, it's death to the tabletop RPG.
Right. I mean, it's death to a lot of my hobbies, but
yeah, fair enough.
I've been doing my final push through Kingdom Hearts, and
oh, cool.
I think I'm about halfway or maybe a third of the way into Dream Drop Distance, which should be the second to last game I need to play in order to. And then I think the last one isn't even a real full game. It's kind of like a little mini thing. I don't really know. I'm trying to not spoil this next little bit because this is kind of the territory that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. So are you playing like 2.5 like Redux or whatever?
Yes. Yeah, I bought both the 1.5, 2.5 collection, and then I got the 2.8 collection, which is Dream Drop Distance, which came out on the PSP. It's actually really good. I'm kind of bummed that I missed out on it because I had a PSP when it came out. I just kind of stopped using it.
Kingdom Hearts on the PSP. Meh.
Well, and it's weird because normally I'd be like, nah, I don't really want a portable one. But I think, personally, my favorite combat systems come from Birth by Sleep, which was the PSP game.
That's an awesome title.
Right? I mean, hold on. We're not even at the weirdest title yet, which is
Birth by Sleep.
Which is 358 divided by 2 days.
Wait, time out.
Yeah?
Yeah, no. Keep talking. I'm just going to figure something out really quick.
Okay. So yeah, I've been doing my final push because at the end of this month, I guess spoilers for an episode that's coming up, Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, and I'm super excited about that.
For those of you playing at home, that's 179 days. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
And I've been prepping for my second big long-running campaign with you and all of,
and our crew.
And our crew. We had finished the 6, and now we're getting into the spooky ghost stories and all sorts of fun stuff.
Ooh.
So that's kind of been my jam. What have you been up to?
Yeah. A few things. I have been reading for some Silver Age comic books.
Nice.
Because I was for a while reading this really cool book called Marvel: The Untold Story, and I was just really curious to see like what these like early comic books were like. So I'm currently reading through the run of Spider-Man that was drawn by Steve Ditko and written by Stan Lee.
Okay.
And then I'm going to read most of the first part of the big Fantastic Four run that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did, which, according to the back cover, covers about 3 full years worth of comics. So that's pretty cool.
That's a lot of comics.
It is a lot of comics. The second big thing I've been working on is I'm still watching Star Trek. And then
What?
Yeah,
that's right? Unheard of.
There's a lot of it. It's a lot.
Where are you in the lexicon that is the Star Trek universe?
I am in season 5 of Deep Space Nine, which
how deep is that space?
It's 7 seasons.
Yeah.
And then Voyager, the next series, is also 7 seasons, and then Enterprise, the one after that, is 5 seasons.
Man, you got a long and strange journey ahead of you.
Well, and now I finished season 1 of Star Trek Discovery.
You did finish that first season?
I did. It was kind of all over the place.
I'm seeing commercials for the most recent season, and I'm kind of like, wow, things got really crazy after after I stopped watching it.
Yeah, things got crazy. Then they like established some kind of stuff that like I'm curious to see like how they handle it in the future, because it's like they more or less make it look like Klingon science is just magic.
Wow, that seems very Klingon racist.
Yeah, it was really bizarre, because it's like they figured out how to do like fucking like warp drives and shit, but like there's this scene where like one of the like you see like one of the things they did to one of the characters, and like they're in this room and then just like glowing stars like float around them as they're like chanting in Klingon, and I was like, what science is this?
Dude, it's that vocal telemetry science.
Fair enough.
Where like if you get your octaves in the right tone and at the right exact moment with the air molecules, you get Jesus.
I'm gonna let you keep talking. See how long you let this go for.
You know what? I would say I am an expert on mumbo jumbo super science magic. So
fair enough.
I got a PhD.
I mean, you do watch Doctor Who, so
like got him. Oof.
Ha.
I did just watch the most recent episode, to like the New Year's episode, and it was pretty good. I liked it. Cool. I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'm basing this off of like the reviews that I've seen on Amazon, because that's how I had to watch it. It's because I don't have traditional cable.
Yeah.
And the reviews for this most recent season were kind of all over the place.
Right.
I really liked the first season. I thought it made sense. I really enjoy the companions again, because sometimes it's kind of you either love them or you hate them to death. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because a lot of the companions were very, they were either too smart, and it's like, all right, what planet did you really come from? It's obviously not Earth. And then they were too dumb, and they were like, wait, I did this insensitive thing and killed a space whale? Oh, no.
That sounds like it's a real episode, because that sounds way too specific to not be a real episode.
I think it was an episode.
Oh, God.
There's a lot of episodes, though, so I don't think it's quite Star Trek lexicon, but...
Oh, no. It's up there, man. I mean, I don't think there was ever lengthy hiatus. Well, when's the longest it was off the air? Do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
I don't know the exact amount of years, but I know that between Eccleston and Davies, I think, because they had kind of ran its course.
Yeah.
They had been kind of alluding to this big unspoken event, which is the Time War, which is a whole thing we could do an entire friggin' episode on.
Season.
And they basically had left it so that the doctor had kind of said goodbye to all of his kind of recurring friends and blah, blah, blah. And then supposedly went to this time war. Okay. And then I wouldn't even call it a reboot. They just continued after those events with Eccleston. And I think that's the longest it's been off the air.
Yeah, because I know in terms of Star Trek, like, there was 3 seasons of the first series, and it was off the air for about 2 decades. And then Next Gen was a huge hit. Deep Space Nine started alongside Next Gen. Like, I think they were concurrent for 2 seasons. And then Voyager was concurrent to Deep Space Nine, and then Enterprise kind of fizzled out, and then it was gone for about another decade or so, and then now it's back, but who knows for how long, because it's also kind of controversial.
Okay.
Yeah. And then speaking of other controversial things, I finished season 8 of Voltron, which is the final season of that.
How was it?
I really enjoyed it.
Okay. I assume the rest of the internet doesn't agree with you.
It's very split. I would say.
Okay.
From my looking, it's about 60-40 dislike to like.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely see where some of the criticism is coming from.
I'm sure.
But I wonder too. Like there were aspects of the last season that felt to me very similar to like Gurren Lagann, if you've seen that show.
Okay. I haven't finished it. I said I would, but I think I was sick and I started watching it and I got to the first like big plot point.
The big one?
Yeah, the big one.
The big one? Yeah.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but the big one.
Yeah, So, yes, I got to there. I haven't finished it, mostly because time doesn't exist anymore.
Fair enough.
So,
well, and it's, it just kind of strikes me, and perhaps I'm naive on this point, but it's like, because like I'm a little bit better versed in anime than some of the people I know who didn't like it as much.
Okay.
And so like, to me, it just felt like a really solid final season of an anime. And it's like, maybe if you're not expecting that, like maybe it would come off as a bit, I don't know. But anyway, I liked it.
Well, I think, and this is my personal feelings on the whole hive mind concept, is that I'm sure there's probably a legitimate complaint there somewhere. And then it just like got big and got really big and got this like whole group of people like all chanting the same thing. And then that turns a mild but fairly obviously correct complaint into this like, oh, it sucks now. It's the worst. Yeah. I can't. And, I think at some level we're all kind of on that train, whether we like to believe it or not. But I think there's probably some truth in there, but like a lot of people's, opinions on these very high strung opinions about certain, fandoms and things like that.
Yeah.
There's probably a little over proportioned.
See, this is going to sound ironic coming from one of the hosts of a show called Fandom Roulette, but I try very hard to stay on like the fringes of fandom. Like, yeah,
I mean, we did say we did start this whole thing off as we are shallow dive nerds.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like I was reading an article, and according to the article, like there were such early like shipping wars in Voltron that like people like just stopped watching, and I knew about none of this because I just liked the show, right? Like, right. I would watch the show, I would discuss it with my friends who I also knew watched the show.
Yeah,
we would agree or disagree, but like apparently it got so like vehemently violent on the internet that like people who were purportedly fans of the show would just stop watching it, and I was like, well, then that's not fun. At that point, I could see why you would do that.
Yeah, wow, dang, that's rough. Anyways, this is the longest intro we've ever done.
Yeah, this is a lengthy one. This is a lengthy boy. But anyway, yeah,
it's been a bit.
Welcome to Fan Roulette, everyone. This is a show where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, RPGs, and other nerdy things.
And I think, on top of that, we should change the vocabulary that we use. Because this season's going to get a little weird.
Season's going to get a little weird, yeah.
And I'm gonna propose it to you and to the audience. I think
Okay,
I think we should start calling the role-playing game section, the section at the end. We usually talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but we wanted to leave it open because this season we're not going to talk about D&D at all. At least not heavily. So,
call it the tabletop section?
Yeah, I was going to propose tabletop section instead of...
I like that.
Yeah, so that we got history,
right.
We got video games, we got tabletop games, and then just, the coup de grace of all fandom nerdiness that we can possibly come up with.
Just grab those bags, my friend.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we're in season 2 now. Season 2, I'll get jumping in on the history section. I wanted to talk about heists. Because
yes,
there was I wanted to look at heists just because of their popularity in media and culture.
Yes,
and so the official definition of heist, according to the Cambridge English Dictionary, is a crime in which property is taken illegally and often violently from a person or place. Now, here's the thing: heist is actually a slang term, which means that you can never be tried in a court of law for participating in a heist. It will almost always be categorized under robbery or burglary. So I thought of a couple of different things that I felt helped distinguish heists from other kinds of robberies and burglaries. One, I would argue that heists often involve crews of people. It is very rarely a solo operation.
Yeah, I mean, at least in pop culture, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure history can prove us wrong.
I'm sure they will too, but it usually involves some level of pre-planning. Heists usually have a connotation that there's quite a large sum of valuables being taken, and finally, usually some sort of heightened danger. So those are some of the distinguishing factors I came up with. So I'm going to start off, we're going to go real far back, like real far back to ancient Egypt.
Nice.
That's where I chose to start my little investigation.
Did we find out that Anubis was actually the greatest heist man of all time?
He was, actually.
Or heist person. Pronouns.
Because of they put the weight on the thing.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Egypt is best known for their pyramids. What?
Yeah.
So these are, they were burial structures that were designed to house the mummies and riches of the pharaohs and leadership of Egypt. And because Egyptians believed in a robust afterlife, wealthy Egyptians would often bring along items that would help make their afterlives more comfortable. But do you see the problem here, Cody?
That you don't know what the prices are in Egypt afterlife?
I mean, that's a good one, actually.
Yeah, like, how do you know that Frank on the other side isn't going to upcharge you? And, like, all your gold... What if they don't even do gold doubloons or whatever that, whatever currency was being used at the time? What if they, we only trade in fish?
We're actually going to talk about that, interestingly enough. But how about from the perspective of the other side of things, to the living? What's a problem with making a big stone building filled to the brim with treasure without any protection there?
Oh man, that's a good target for somebody to rob it.
Yeah, so tomb robbing and tomb raiding actually became quite a lucrative occupation.
Started by the great Laura Croft.
Yep, started by the great Laura Croft. 30 years after Indiana Jones did it. And but so here's the problem. Where was all this stuff going? And I know that sounds like a silly question, but according to historians, Egypt's Egypt was a cashless society before 525 BCE.
Okay.
Basically meaning that they did bartering or trading of like goods for goods and things like that. An artisan might be paid with precious metals, but usually precious metals weren't going to be used all that frequently. So it's not like there was this like robust black market where you could take, a staff made out of solid gold and sell it, because one, there's really no way for you to like hide stuff like that. And B, like, what were they going to do with it now? Like, it wasn't like today where it's like, there's a black market where you can like sell the jewels and then like they'll sell the jewels to someone else and things like that,
Sure, I'm not familiar with the black market like you are, so.
And, I mean, hey man, I've dabbled. That's a joke. FBI man, don't arrest me.
Every FBI agent listening right now, this was a joke. This is all in jest.
Thank you for your support. Please like, review, subscribe. But anyways, so historians' best guesses is that it was either corrupt officials, or corrupt members of other royal families or things like that, who would usually hire out these people to go into the tombs and steal the things. And then what they would do is they would take these riches, they would melt them down, and then they would use them to create other beautiful things, or pay the artisans, things like that. So pyramids were reflected a relatively short period of Egyptian burial practices, mainly because of the fact that pharaohs started figuring out that people were going into those big stone buildings and stealing all of their stuff. So they eventually moved over. I know, right?
Oh man, the worst.
Eventually they started moving over to doing these things, which were these like gigantic, isolated, basically subterranean cities that now is colloquially referred to as the Valley of the Kings.
That's rad.
It's really cool. So actually, when archaeologists do their like digging today, a lot of things that they find are these things called shwabes, which are like teeny tiny little little teeny tiny clay men, that are holding like various farming equipment, because the thought was that you would bring these shwabes with you and then they could do the work that you are expected to do in the afterlife.
Ah, classic power move.
Yep. And because they were clay, they weren't valuable, so that's why they're often weren't being
so people
looted.
wouldn't steal them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
So the idea here is that these isolated and buried cities were going to be safer. However, they were also in danger of being looted. So there was one last measure that builders attempted to keep the riches safe, which were traps and curses.
Gasp.
This is when things get fun. So one of the most basic ones that they would do would be creating these gigantic, like, kind of labyrinth designs to turn thieves around. So you wouldn't know, like, where the treasure chambers were, things like that. So you'd get all turned around and try to, have difficulty finding where things were kept. But there were also traps, including falling rocks that were connected to ropes or wires. Camouflaged holes that could lead to pits with spikes.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, like real Indiana Jones stuff.
Man.
Maybe not quite as mechanically advanced as those movies would have you suggest.
I mean, you don't have to be advanced when you just got a pit full of spikes.
Fair enough, man.
That shit'll fuck you up.
They might have created, like, powdered poisons that they could line hallways with, wires that were kept at, like, head level, things like that. And then one last one was through the use of curses, which promised an unkind fate to those who stole, promising the wrath of Thoth and other gods of the underworlds.
Nice. I wish I had a book on curse making.
Yeah, I mean, it was often taken from, like, the books of the dead and things like that. And then, so once again, these didn't prove as effective as they had hoped, mainly because If you were getting information by corrupted officials and things like that, there was no way to prevent them from like telling you what the right paths were or informing you of where the different traps were placed and things like that.
I also have a feeling that if you're already going to be stealing stuff, I don't think you're necessarily worried about the curses of these gods.
Yeah, fair enough. And then finally, there is really no way to know who these there were relatively no ways to know who the grave robbers were. One reason was that during this time period, writing is considered like a religious thing, so scribes were incredibly valued. So the written word isn't quite as robust as it is today. They did have the written word, which is why ancient Egypt is considered part of history as opposed to prehistory. But it's possible that these people were coming from like the lower tiers of society, or, you know, perhaps foreigners who didn't necessarily fear the curse of the gods. However, there's also evidence to suggest that perhaps even tombs were robbed before they were closed, and perhaps even stolen of by relatives.
What a bunch of dicks.
Right? Hey man, yeah, I know. But they were like burying like thousands of dollars worth of gold and stuff.
Right, but they weren't using it in the intended purpose of thousands of dollars. They were bartering.
Fair. They were making themselves look dope.
Yeah, they were dope AF.
But one tomb that remained relatively intact was that of Tutankhamun, or King Tut. However, there is evidence that it was robbed at least twice during this antiquity period. But one theory about why this tomb was relatively well preserved versus a lot of the other tombs is that when they were building another one of these subterranean burial plots, they might have just like covered over the entrances to King Tut's tomb. However, there is still the curse of King Tut's tomb. There's fun stuff you can read about that, including people on the dig getting sick and things like that. So who knows? Maybe it was real. So, my big question that I'm going to ask to myself and to you is, do you think that this could be considered a heist? So I would argue yes, because I was the one who did all the research and wrote this up. But I would argue that it qualifies as a heist, even if they were given insider information. So the
I doubt any of the. I mean, and who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I doubt most of these tomb robbers were just like people with absolutely zero information getting super lucky getting in and getting out. Like they had to have an inside guy, or you know, where's the guy in the van, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they need a getaway van when the mummies start coming to life because of the curses. Like
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You got it in one. But yeah, the wealth store in these tombs were usually wildly high beyond compare. There's evidence that robbers did work in crews, and there was the high risk of traps and eternal damnation. So while we don't know about the specific people, we do know that they were able to steal some of the greatest treasures and tombs that were built during the Egyptian period, which I feel qualifies it to be, yes, this is in fact a heist. So, do you have any questions?
I also think the treasure that they stole the most was the friendship they made along the way of the heist.
Yeah. Good. I like it. So, yeah, any questions?
Questions? Gosh, how did it... And I know this isn't going to be an actual, like, answer that you could probably give me.
Sure.
But what do you think crew sizes were for, like, these big, like, tasks? Like, what do you think? 4 or 5 people if you include an inside person who knows like all the deets?
Yeah, I mean, I would estimate that, you know, there's like power in numbers.
Right. So, yeah, and plus you always need the fall guy in case you're not sure if an area is trapped or not.
Sure. Well, I mean, not only that, but you know, if it's just a guy, there's nothing to say that the person who, you know, you stole for wasn't immediately going to turn you in, right?
Right.
I saw this guy robbing the tomb, and then he gets to like run off with, you know, the stuff that you stole. I would say that, yeah, probably 3 or 4 would be a good size number. Also, people are probably asking at home, hey, like, how did they get paid? They were usually getting paid in, like, things like food or clothing or things like that. So while they were stealing these, like, epic, beautiful gold pieces and things like that, there was nothing they could do with them. So they were getting things that, they would need to survive, just probably in greater quantities than they would have gotten doing an honest day's work.
Nice.
So that's it. That's heist number 1.
Nice. I like it. I think it's a heist. To answer your earlier question, definitely a heist. Yeah. For sure. And that's a cool movie idea.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you, movie people in California.
Hollywood.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into that section, we're kind of getting into the middle section already.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah.
Oh, God, that intro was so long, huh? Oh, man.
Yeah, so we should probably middle section first.
Maybe I'll save Spider-Verse for next week.
Probably. Not a bad idea.
Hey, middle section time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
So, guys, thank you so much for listening to us. You're getting to this point. This is the middle section where we tell you about our social medias and ask for your help as we record and try to get our way up those internet ranks so more people can hear us.
The ranks, walking fast, faces fast. Doodle-doodle-doo.
Oh man, I'm surprised we haven't done that before.
Yeah. So
anyways, if you want to get at us, you want to talk to us, you want to answer the question that Joe posed for the history section about whether or not tomb robbers were considered heists, you can get at us at fandomr_podcast. That's also where we post a lot of our information when episodes go up, if there's a snag in the system, or occasionally we'll think of something funny or post a cool picture to promote the next episode, etc., etc. But if you're feeling like, hey man, that's a little too much of my face out there, don't worry, I understand. You can send us an email at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com. Okay. This is where we are storing all of our Garbage Kid fanfic that the audience has created and crafted for us.
Wait, is there really one?
No. But in the future, this will be true. Okay. So, you can also find all of our delightful information at www.fandomroulette.com. And at the bottom, there's a little questionnaire that you can fill out if you'd rather do that instead of using your email, because I get that. We're also on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and basically wherever you get your podcast from. That's where we are. So
that's a lot of places.
Do the like-ins and the smashing, because apparently that's a thing. You got to smash things. You got to smash the buttons and the things on your desk.
Oh shit! I realized that we were asking people to destroy their
do the likings and the sharing. Definitely share with your friends. This is a personal project for us. We do this in our free time. And we want to see this grow and see what more fun, goofy content we can create.
Yeah.
We're also on Instagram and Tumblr and Facebook. All Fandom Roulette.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And that's that for the middle section. We're done with the middle section. And now it's time to talk about other things in the show.
Yeah.
Dot.
What's that?
Hey guys.
Oh, hello there, new person that Joe didn't inform me that was coming to the show.
It's me, Toad, from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, where I sound like a New Yorker.
Why does Toad sound like a New Yorker?
Because they hadn't established the fact that we are supposed to sound like squealy mushroom men.
That's true. They hadn't gone to hello.
Yeah, no. Joe's not even gonna attempt that one. I mean, what? Shit. I heard you gonna be talking about video games.
I am going to be talking about video games, and
I like video games.
I do too. I actually probably like them too much. But today,
have you played my video game?
I actually have, Toad.
Captain Toad?
Yeah, I have played Captain Toad. It's a great game.
Yeah,
it's a fun little puzzler.
Thank you. Did you play the game I should be in, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate?
Technically, you are in as a
but
as
Peach
a counter for
me
Peach.
Out, she pulls me out of her pocket or whatever.
Yeah.
The mechanics of it are not very clear.
None of the fictional things that happen in Super Mario really make any sense.
I mean, what are you talking about? Like when you jump on a toidle, it comes out of its shell. That's just science, Cody.
No, I'm talking about like jumping into a pipe that takes you to another goddamn plane of existence. That's what I'm talking about. Or eating mushrooms makes you taller and turns you into a giant monster.
I mean,
and if you ingest magical flowers, you can spit hot fire.
Yeah, Toad. That doesn't. Hey, why don't you shut the fuck up, Joe? I'm sorry, Toad. Toad, you're much more aggro than like than the cartoon. Yeah, I am. I'm above Toad. So anyway, Cody, what are you gonna talk about in the video game section this week?
Oh man, you really brought your A game for season 2, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love how aggro he went. God damn. So this season, while I was doing my research, I'm still doing role playing games. There was a little tweak in that formula though.
Okay.
So today I'm going to talk about, I guess, what is a role playing game versus like a tabletop role playing game like Dungeons and Dragons and all those things. And then maybe a brief little thing on the weird kind of fucked up history of role playing games as they transitioned to the digital medium.
Okay.
So first off, what is a role playing game?
I'm curious. Tell me, Cody.
I would say I scoured the internet. I found the things that people usually say are like, these are the key points, and then I boiled a bunch of the nonsense away to what I think are like the 3 core components.
You distilled it, if you will.
Yeah, I'm a distiller now.
Mm-hmm.
Totally legal, above board distiller. Anyways, and I think there are 3 really key points to a role playing game that kind of changes it from just a game with role playing game elements to like a full fledged. You could say this is in the RPG genre. First, it's the story and the setting. Most, if not all, RPGs are heavily invested in their stories. They're usually, you, the main character, are charged with a seemingly impossible task, usually to save the world or the universe or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But these are kind of the bread and butter of RPGs. Like, these games should have a very, elaborate story with twists and turns and characters and meaningful interactions with said characters. These games are also typically about exploration and quests. You'll know an RPG right away if you're basically given the freedom to move around the world and talk to people and explore big, dangerous places and quests. Like, as soon as somebody's like, I need you to go to this dangerous place and do a thing, you're in an RPG. Let's be real. And then last, but certainly not least, and I think this is like the key component, like this really separates a lot of games, are the fucking stats.
Aw, stats.
Regardless of whether the player is shown the stats, all RPGs are just balls deep in statistics. Like, they've numbered everything that you could be. Like, if you're strong, you have a high strength score. If you're dexterous, you've got a high dex score. Maybe you're not so charismatic, you got a low charisma score.
Oh.
They have numbered, and oftentimes they'll show you what those numbers are.
Okay.
Sometimes they don't, but if your game has a bunch of numbers, if there's, and there's a lot of terminology that's borrowed from tabletop role-playing games, like HP, which is health points, or EXP, or XP, which is experience points, which you use to show progression as a hero, or, what have you. Your game is, you're keeping track of this, because you're gonna want to know what you're good at. So, like, if you have a high strength, like, oh, good, you're good at, like, throwing boulders or jumping over big chasms and whatnot.
Ooh.
Stats are a big, huge thing. So I think those are, like, the three
stats.
core points. Stats, exploration and quests, and then, these big stories and settings. Which brings me to the history of RPGs. Which is a mess, and I'm going to boil it down so that we can get through this, because in my personal opinion, this is very much like he said, she said, they said, and a lot of people arguing about what this is.
Okay.
So it first started off with what they referred to, people in the presumably 70s up.
Mm-hmm.
They called them CRPGs, or computer role-playing games, or console role-playing games.
All right,
and there was this huge divide.
Got it.
So for people who were playing on computers, you had a mouse and keyboard for the most part. You didn't have game pads and things like that. So they felt very similar or reminiscent of the Dungeons and Dragons tabletop role-playing games with, like, inventory and stats and turn-based combat, those kinds of things. Then you had console RPGs that would come out later. So instead of games like Ultima or Wizardry, which are, like, kind of two of the most infamous, like, computer RPGs, you started having games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, and, a lot of these kind of, and they would eventually be defined and criticized as, like, more action-oriented RPGs.
Okay.
Where now you're playing on a controller. And a lot of those controllers back in the day were, like, what? A D-pad, a control stick with, like, 2 or 3 buttons tops? So a lot of games were, at least on the console side, they were simplified and sped up to match that kind of format. Which isn't to say that either side was, like, AKA right or wrong, but this was, like, a huge divide. People were like, you're either a console RPGer, and, people would refer to it as kind of like the cute, like, almost baby-esque version, which I disagree with. Or the computer RPGs, which is, like, real, like, oh, I'm an adventurer, and I'm super awesome and badass, and I'm gonna kill the monster.
Yep.
And there was a lot of discussion about it, and I think for the shorthand version, I think they both have their merits, and they're both fun in their own different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, they started to blur the lines, There were some games that were coming out on the console that they started to look and feel like computer RPGs, and vice versa. And then they started referring to RPGs as more the stuff that was embedded in computer RPGs, the, slower pace. They were usually older characters in darker settings. Typically, that's not always the case.
Sure.
This would eventually be morphed and turned into what we now refer to as Western RPGs.
Okay.
So basically, games made in the West. And then those console RPGs would eventually get the term JRPG, or Japanese RPG. And again, they still had the same debate. Western RPGs were very mature and they were more thoughtful, but like console RPGs were more streamlined and the story was very much like driven from point A to point B. And, you know, there was a lot of arguments back and forth. It was just nuts. Yeah. Like, as I was reading more and more about this, they were fucking crazy on this shit. But in the end, it doesn't really matter because they began to meld the process, and then things got even worse when, you know, RPG elements were just getting slapped into every single game. And now it's kind of like RPG is this kind of weird buzzword that means, oh, there's going to be numbers and skill trees and numbers, lots of numbers, because you guys like them.
NPCs,
non-playable characters who will talk to you. Often people will say, you know, interesting dialogue options became part of the RPG genre. Or, you know, like interesting dialogue and like branching dialogue where like if you say the wrong thing here, you can't talk to them about this later. There was all sorts of stuff. And so with the kind of too long of just a bunch of pointless nonsense history, I have decided that my focus, because
that's actually the subtitle of my degree. It's just a bunch of anyway, carrying on.
So, to avoid having to learn all the intricacies, I am going to do what I grew up with, and I'm going to talk a lot about JRPGs.
All right.
I was a console kid. I didn't really get my first computer until much later in the kind of computer RPG or Western RPG timeline, if you will. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my expertise is not in that genre. And personally, Kingdom Hearts 3 fits into the JRPG so nice and snug that I'm really excited to dive deep into that.
So we're going to stand in line and choose text commands.
Yeah. What? Wait. Oops. So that's kind of it. Next week I'm going to talk about one of my favorite games that I missed growing up, but loved it when I played it as I was older. I'll get into it next week. But I wanted to ask you a question.
Oh, yeah.
What was your favorite RPG growing up?
What was my favorite RPG growing up? See, I'm not going to lie to you, Cody. I was more of a real-time strategy kid.
I figured as much.
I liked Age of Empires. And...
Dude, who didn't like Age of Empires? Let's be real.
Because then you could summon a car with a cannon.
Yes,
let's see. My favorite RPG growing up, though, I was a pretty big fan of Final Fantasy 3, which I think is technically 6, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Japanese 6, the American 3.
I didn't get very far into it, but I remember everything about it was really cool. Oh, and then Super Mario RPG Legends of like the Silver Coins or whatever.
Close enough. Yes.
Did you ever play what was it actually called?
I think it's Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, although I don't have the title in front of me.
The Silver Coins was Super Mario Land 2, which I believe was the canonical introduction of Wario.
Yes, I believe you were right.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, my favorite RPG growing up was Pokemon, which spoilers will be a topic of conversation. And then and I'm sure and question for the audience, and you can tweet at us, what was your, if you were heavily invested in the Final Fantasy realm, what was your Final Fantasy game? Because I have a feeling it has been my experience that everyone has one.
Oh, for sure.
And mine was Final Fantasy VII. I didn't have access to 3 when it came out. I lived a very strange video game childhood where I had to like give up consoles to play other consoles and didn't have quite a wide selection as I could now, but
You excited for that HD reboot?
Right.
Are you excited for that?
Wait, what?
Aren't they making like Final Fantasy VII like HD reboot or whatever?
So, that's a conversation we probably will have at some point. But yeah, they're remaking 7, but I think it's more than that. I think they're rebooting 7. I don't think it's going to be like a I don't think it's just going to be an HD remake. I think they're rebooting it and using different mechanics than the old Final Fantasy VII mechanics. And I'm really excited about that, but I don't think that's coming out for like easily another like 700 years.
I mean, probably, but hey, man. Either one of two things is going to happen. Either it'll come out and it'll be rad, or the world will be over. So anyways, oh God, I'm not actually going to do that because the Foley on that's probably bad because my nose is a little stuffy.
What is that smell?
It smells bad.
I bet it smells like
a garbage kid.
I was going to say week old deli meat that's been sitting out.
Garbage kid.
But yes, a garbage kid.
Hey guys, welcome to Garbage Kid. This is the part of the show where we roll a rando character and we give them a rad name from our secret name generating website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait. No, it's from our top leading scientists of the planet.
Our secret name generating website. You'll never know. The internet.
Winku.
Wink. All right, so anyway, this is the part of the show where if you go to the middle of a book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Everything?
Yeah, everything. There are like these tables where you can like roll dice and create a completely random character. And so we do this because it's fun, and it's funny to see like what you can roll up. Because sometimes there's contradictions. So this week we're going to talk about my new friend named Paradox Mage Grief.
Wait, what? Paradox Mage what?
Mage Grief.
Mage Grief.
Yeah, it's a pretty good name, huh?
Oh man, that's 100%.
So Paradox Mage Grief is a halfling sorcerer who is lawful neutral but has a criminal background.
Well, okay. I mean, right? Hopefully they spent their time.
I mean, who knows? We'll find out later in Wink. And so they knew who their parents were or are, and they were born in the home of a healer or a midwife. So that's nice.
That is nice.
They had no siblings and no Disney here because they had both their mother and their father.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
They were also wealthy, and they lived in a large house. So that life of crime making more and more sense. They had close friends with a normal childhood. They became a criminal because they fell in with a gang of reprobates and ne'er-do-wells, and they learned their specialty from them.
Very nice. Very nice. Wrong neighborhood.
Right? This is the fun of the Garbage Kids, friends. They became a sorcerer because after they escaped from a magical conflagration, they realized that though they were unharmed, they were not unchanged. They began to exhibit unusual abilities that they are just beginning to understand. And then their arcane...
Like the ability to sense things before they happen.
No, that's
and climbing on walls.
This next week, Cody. All right, so their arcane origin, their birth was prophesied in an ancient text, and they are foretold to use their powers for terrible ends. Ooh. Their
Checks
reaction. Now, this is funny if you pay attention to the last one. So, their powers are seen as a great blessing by those around them, and they are expected to use them in service to their community. So, like
Antichrist situation.
I don't know, man. It's confusing, right? Like, maybe that's why they have the big house.
Yeah, maybe.
Their supernatural marks that they have an extra toe on each foot. Weird.
Oh, that's so neat.
And then there's Sign of Sorcery. If they are standing when they cast a spell, they raise 6 inches into the air and then gently float back down, which is pretty cool.
That sounds really rad.
So
I want to do that.
We made Mary Poppins.
Yeah, but the Mary Poppins who is prophesized to do bad things.
Yeah, Mary Poppins.
There must be some fucking, like, wiki shit that I don't know about Mary Poppins.
I'm just creating the Mary Poppins cinematic universe right now, so, yeah. And then she also does have the extra toe on each foot. She just doesn't talk about it because that's not proper.
Right. Well, you never see her without her shoes on anyway.
So anyways, Paradox is 41 to 50 years old, and they have 6 life events.
Yes!
They gained a bit of good fortune because a relative bequeathed them with a simple weapon.
Okay.
They suffered a tragedy. A romantic relationship ended, but it ended amicably, so...
Well,
they encountered something magical, which was their fortune was read by a diviner.
Okay.
They spent time working on a job related to their background, so perhaps a heist?
Tie-in!
We'll see. They suffered another tragedy, which was war ravaged their home community, reducing everything to rubble and ruin. In the aftermath, they either helped your town you either helped your town rebuild or moved somewhere else. And finally, they fell in love or got married.
Cool.
So that is Paradox. Grief Mage.
I think it was Mage Grief.
Paradox Mage Grief. I forgot about it. So, hey, Cody, now should we use our scientifically valid way of discovering whether or not... do you think they go to Hot Topic?
Drum roll, please.
Drum.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
although
I wouldn't say necessarily buys every Livestrong wristband that gets in stock.
Yeah.
But definitely occasionally goes in when they're feeling a little moody and they got some money to blow on the Amber Pacific album that just came out.
I would agree with that. I will also say...
How many weird 90s Hot Topic references can we make before
we run out of steam?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out. Considering now that like Hot Topic has basically just become like, hey, it's another fandom store. Do you kids like Riverdale?
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Because we got Riverdale merch. I actually bought a Christmas present at Hot Topic. So
for your Hot Topic friend?
No, for my sister.
Your Hot Topic sister.
Because they got Harry Potter merch, and my sister likes Harry Potter.
It's true. They do have a bunch of Harry Potter merch.
Yeah, they and then they got they're like Funko Pop. Okay, I say this like every store hasn't become Funko Pop City.
Okay, there's but Hot Topic is like, we bought all of the Funko Pop figures.
It's like you go into like freaking like Forever 21 and it's like, all right, here's like our clothing and over here's our Funko Pop area. It's like, oh hey, what's up Funko Pop area?
And I'm also curious as to how many of the stores that we talk about in our local area that are like not anywhere else.
Oh, like what?
Yeah, have you thought about that? Like, the fact that maybe Forever 20... I mean, I don't know. It probably is, but... What if Forever 21 is like a Ohio thing?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know much about the clothing store operation.
Neither do I, because all my clothes come from Kohl's.
Nice. That also might be an Ohio thing. I don't think so, though.
I don't think so, though. A lot of it comes from Target, too, and I know that's not just an Ohio thing. But anyways, crumple, 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 that's the garbage, kid.
It just felt like the right noise that was needed.
I can't do it. Oh, God. Oh, God. So anyways,
Okay, so our last section, which we'll keep brief since we're already over schedule.
yeah,
Um,
that intro, man, it was a good conversation. I didn't want to
yeah,
like move away
no,
from
it was
it.
great. It was beautiful, and I'm sure everyone loved it.
It's weird. It's
So,
like our intros are almost becoming like grab bags at the beginning of the episode.
right,
But anyway,
which is fine in
it is
my
fine.
eyes.
Yeah. Except that next week
So
I do
for
want
the
to talk about
tabletop
Spider-Verse,
section,
so
yes, we will definitely talk about that.
maybe it'll give you a chance to go and like catch it. So
Maybe, who knows? I this week is terrible for me.
Thwip.
So that I'm trying to ignore it. Stop it. So for this season in the tabletop section, we're not gonna be thwipping or whatever he's doing.
You know what
We're
I'm
gonna be
doing.
talking about another RPG.
What?
Yeah.
But Gary,
I know. Mike, Gary,
goodbye,
everyone
Gak.
else at Wizards of the Coast.
That was a
This
bad
isn't
joke.
goodbye. This is it's a bad bit I did last time.
We'll see you later because we talked a lot about D&D last season. So I
the
personally
last
wanted to
year.
change it up.
Yeah. So
Oh yeah. So we've mentioned this before. We've talked about this before. It's a system called the Powered by the Apocalypse system.
yes.
So Cody, why don't you give us a little background on the Powered by the Apocalypse system?
Well, it's actually quite recent. Well, I guess recent in the grand scheme of things. It's not. It's not
like
embedded
brand new.
in. Right. It's not brand new, but it was developed in 2010 by Vincent Baker, who was creating it for Apocalypse World, which was his. I would call it, and maybe it's not his vision of it, but it is a rule set that is heavily into the Mad Max, wasteland era of like, doing cool shit, but it's a comparative to other RPG systems, it's a very not simple, but rules light system in which it's more about having a conversation between you and the other players and your game master or your apocalypse master. I don't know. I don't actually know his specifics, but it's a conversation where you tell your game master, man, I want to do a backflip off of my hog and shoot this dude with my, my
Rifle.
AK or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, you roll for it. And the nice thing about this system is it uses a very bounded system with the 2d6.
Yeah. It's one of those things
There's
too.
not a whole lot of number crunching.
Yeah.
And it's nice that, hey, you really only need pen, paper, and then those Monopoly die that have been sitting in the box that you haven't played with, because you don't fucking let your family over anymore because of the last Monopoly debacle where, you
struck your own nerve.
Yeah, I'm having weird, like, no, that's my property. And no one ever plays the game right, and they always make up rules to make it last longer, but that just makes it more annoying, and it's the worst. But anyways, you can grab those shitty dice and play.
Jeez. Yep.
I was having a moment. I'm sorry. Doesn't usually happen. Anyways, this system and kind of the one of the things that Vincent Baker was very open about was that this was a kind of not exactly the particular game that he was making, but the system was kind of open sourced and people were allowed to tweak and alter and change it. And there are so many games based off of this system now for all sorts of types of games. And we've talked about them before, but Dungeon World is like another popular one. I believe it won an award in 2013 for like indie game. And that's basically taking the fantasy dungeon exploring aspects of Dungeons and Dragons and other games like it and putting it into the narrative system of the Apocalypse Engine, or powered by the Apocalypse Engine. And then you've got, we've talked about it before, Monster of the Week, which is kind of your B movie monster hunting mystery.
Yep.
Monster Hearts, which is now that I've read more about it, I didn't realize that Monster Hearts was kind of almost like a romance thing. Like it was heavily
fucking.
Yeah, it's teen monsters trying to get some. Was unaware of that.
Everyone has a sex move.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yep.
And I'm like intrigued, but also, anyways, not important.
But Blades in the Dark is like a modified.
Yeah, very heavily
system.
Modified. I think it still uses the 2d6.
It's still 2d6. It
but
still
a
has
lot
playbooks and harm and things, but
right, there are some mechanics that are still embedded in it. But yeah, also there's a game that I'm looking at called Masks, which is kind of a build your own Teen Titans scenario and play through.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is super cool. Like the idea of being a teen, but also a superhero kind of. So anyways, going away from that a little bit, and we'll talk about this in later episodes, but an author by the name of Avery Alder, who created Monster Hearts, created basically a hack for the Powered by the Apocalypse system called Simple World, because his idea, or his thought, was that people were theory crafting and trying to make their own tweaked version of Apocalypse World in their universe and the things that they wanted to play. And people were making 200, 300 page books about their new play-tested game, and they've never thrown dice at it.
Yeah.
And so he came up with a hacked version called Simple World, which we'll dive into next episode.
Sounds good to me. To
basically get the core, or what Avery considers the core mechanics of the Powered by the Apocalypse system, and how if you're feeling very creative, and maybe, this talk of, us talking about tabletop role-playing games has really got you oh, there's this idea that I have, but there's no game that really fits it. This is the perfect place to start doing that. Yeah.
I will say
and
this.
It's a free PDF. If you type in Simple World and Avery Alder, it is, if you want to get caught up before next session or the next episode where we start kind of getting deep into it, it's a free PDF. And it's a nice read. It's very quick. I think it's like 10 pages. It's not very long.
It's not long at all. I will say
this.
this.
Yeah, it's going to be good fun.
As I was reading through it, I was giving me potential ideas for perhaps trying my hand at my own Simple World.
Yeah. But, I like it.
Yeah. So anyways, shall we wrap her up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, thank you guys once again so much for listening to another episode of Phantom Roulette.
Thanks.
Season 2 premiere.
Season 2.
Please go back to our middle section to learn a little bit more about our social media.
Social media.
Yeah. So this week we threw out a couple of questions for you guys. So please hit us up on Twitter or on the email. We want to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think that tomb robbers in Egypt could be considered heists? What was your favorite RPG growing up as a kid, or video game RPG? And
yes, very specifically video games.
Yeah, video games. And then last but certainly not least, if you get a chance to look at Simple Worlds, what is a property? I'm just coming up with this one right off the cuff. What do you think a property that you love that you feel is not represented in RPGs that you could use Simple Worlds to try to replicate?
Nice. Love it.
Yeah. But anyways, as always, please rate, review, subscribe. That brings us up on our numbers and things like that. And once again, we love you guys. Thank you for listening. All that good stuff. But signing off for Fan Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.